So I was 15 when I left home. Shortly thereafter, I had met who was my first husband. I graduated high school pregnant, and we got married 1 week later. About 5 years later, I was pregnant with our third child, and when I was 7 months along, he left. So I had a really harsh reality check on what it was going to be like to be a parent by myself. My mom was a single mom. She was a hard worker. She did a great job raising us. My dad wasn't in the picture, and for whatever reason, I just didn't have him in my life. So I didn't understand what a marriage would have looked like. My ex-husband also had a dysfunctional role model for marriage. His parents divorced. There was a lot of trauma there for him. And instead of leaning on each other when we went through trials or struggles, I felt, you know what, I'm hurting. I don't need you. Like, I can do this on my own. I'm independent. I had a great example of what an independent woman looks like. He had a great example of how to, I guess, maybe put your guard up towards women. He didn't have respect for his mom after the divorce with his dad and his mom. He was hurt by his mom. So I think that was just a very toxic bomb that went off. And that's just kind of how things went. We were so young, and we were clueless on what a marriage should have looked like. When we would disagree or have arguments, I would shut down because I didn't want to, I don't know if it was I didn't want to reach out, or I just didn't know how to reach out and try to break those barriers down. And I guess I kind of was just hoping that maybe he would just know how to fix things, because my communication wasn't good. When I'm hurt, I close up. I think a lot of people do. And for him, he was always a very quiet person, but it didn't make it easier when I would shut down because he didn't know how to reach in and hey, what's going on? But it was pretty awful, and it became more destructive. It became very physical. At one point, it became physically violent. And I'm not saying these things to down talk him or anyone, but I think there was a point where he pulled a gun on me that I just realized there's no going back to this. Because if someone could lose their mind so quickly that it would come to a situation like that, I just don't know how that would have worked out if I had stayed. So, but it wasn't like an overnight thing. It progressed. And I can say it even started before we met, because those things that we had seen and we grew up around, they set us up for failure, I think. It just wasn't a good example. It was just seeds that were planted that weren't healthy seeds. I guess for me, because I have insecurities for a lot of things, I found that he was watching pornography, and I took that very personal because it was very hurtful to think that anyone would want to be in a relationship with somebody and commit themselves and say that they commit themselves through their vows in a church, and just then you find this whole different side of this person. And it wasn't just one or two things. It was the history of things, and him reaching out and trying to, I guess, be with other people. And I feel like I lost a part of myself in that because I didn't understand how to process that. I don't want to say I was innocent to what that stuff was, but it was a shock that it happened to me. And it was a shock that it happened with my kids in the home. And I guess the hurt from that was very hard to forgive. And I don't feel like he was ever truly repentant of it. I felt like when you get caught doing something, you're going to say sorry. But what were you doing to keep yourself from doing that? What were you doing to step in and trying to keep that situation from happening? It's one of those things where you say you're sorry because you got caught. I wish that he would have been more, I don't want to say self-respect, I just wish he had more integrity, that would have never been an issue. I feel like when I learned about the pornography, and I started to see the extent of what was going on. And I realized this is an addiction for this person, and I can't change it. And I never felt like I was strong enough to leave, because I would always think, well, if I can just stay longer, maybe I'll just accept it. And here I am, I'm now taking my morals and I'm willing to alter them because I feel like I'm going to be safer with him and have that security. But in the end, there's no security. There was just pain and there was hurt. And I feel like because there wasn't an intentional action to try to resolve that and try to heal that, that I became bitter and I held it against him. I didn't see him trying to, get help. I didn't see him seeing that there was wrong in that. He was upset because it hurt me, but he didn't know that, or didn't think or didn't care that that was wrong. And some people are like that, but I married someone who was like that, and that's not who I am. So I did carry the bitterness with me, and it was hurtful. I was so hurt by it. And we ended up, when he left, nothing came of that. There was more struggles afterwards. So this was never a resolve. This never was something where I felt like I could, forgive. I mean, I would try to sit there and think, okay, it's not the person I need to forgive. I have to understand, there's a spirit behind that person, and that's what I need to be praying for and addressing. But there was never a resolution to any of that. So it kind of stayed open, and it altered my way of thinking towards other people and my trust for other people. And that ultimately, I think, was the biggest challenge I have, because that's the one thing, the one insecurity I have that I've carried with me, is just feeling like, why am I not good enough? And why do you not see any wrong in such a thing like that? And I don't want to sound judgmental. I know it is, but it's what hurt me. That was a real hurt for me. And it just changed how I feel about people in that context. When I was raising my kids on my own, child support, any type of support wasn't something that I was dependent on. He ended up, after he left me, I had filed for a legal separation. My mom had encouraged me to do this just to protect the kids, to ensure that they still had insurance and that we still had money, at least just to buy the basics for them, because I could work. I wasn't working. I had these kids at home and I was still pregnant. And then he ended up leaving his job 2 weeks after I filed separation. And he had told me that if you don't go to the court for child support, then I'll help buy whatever you need. And I was nervous because he had lied about things before. I just already couldn't trust him. And so I had to do what I thought was the right thing to do and try to get the legal part of it involved. And that was not the surefire way to make sure we had what we needed or the kids had what they needed, because he just quit his job. He didn't care. And I shouldn't say he didn't care. He was so angry at me for whatever reasons he had, that maybe he didn't think about the consequences of what he did. So I was bitter about that. And like I had mentioned before, I couldn't afford things for the kids. And I would be very angry and I would be hurt, but then I'd be angry and bitter at him for showing up to pick up the kids at sporadic times. He would have a haircut. He was always big on making sure he looked good. But my kids, I couldn't even afford to buy clippers to do their own hair. And he would, why isn't their hair done? Why are their clothes dirty? And it's like, they're not dirty, they're just old. I don't have money for this stuff. I would have people donate things to me. I wouldn't even ask for help, but it's like the need was so bad that they would see that I'm struggling, but I wouldn't want to ask for help. And so I would become very angry at him for that, and his just judgment on me, and the kids are better off with me. And it's like, you're not even around. You don't take any interest in them unless you're upset with me, and then you try to find things to throw at me. And it was just tiring, and I started to really feel down about myself. I couldn't take up jobs that would require, me to be there like an 8 to 5. I had to take up jobs that I could be home from my kids, because their school schedule, there was no one to watch them. There's no way I would be able to afford childcare. And I didn't live in the best part of town. And I just felt so much struggle, and I kept pushing through. I tried not to focus on my pain and all that. I kept pushing through, and I just figured this is life right now. I'm just kind of numbing myself out to stuff. But I got tired after a while, after a few years of struggling so much, and then just hearing from the other party about how I'm not doing well enough and why can't you do that? Why can't you do this? I started to get this bitterness, and I started to feel this hate towards him. And it was really upsetting because, and it still is upsetting because I can still get that in me. But I didn't realize how much my emotions would take over and turn me into a person I absolutely was not. So when you see me out in public, I will talk to people. I will say this. I'll never get tired of saying how much I love people. I love being around people. I'll sit at a truck stop or at a bus stop, or I'll sit in the middle of the road with someone who's homeless and smells or whatever. Like, I want to be around people. I want to help people. But when I'm home, I get really down on myself, and I don't like being alone. I get those worries that, I don't want to say my husband would ever do this because I know he wouldn't, but sometimes I get concerned that maybe he won't come back home. Sometimes I worry that we're going to end up in a financial situation where I won't be able to afford to buy socks for my kids, or that we're going to pick out what flavor ramen noodle we're going to eat tonight. And I know that it can't be that bad, but you get sick after a ramen noodle for a long time. You start to physically get sick when all you can afford is a 15-cent bag of food, and you hope you have some eggs you can add to it. Those are real fears I have. And the thing is I've seen God get me through all those things, but those were traumatic things that happened, and you don't realize to the extent of how they can carry over into other areas of your life. So when I go home, I don't like being by myself. I have to learn how to like myself. I have to learn to accept that people make mistakes. I make mistakes. And I just have to continually rely on God to help me get through that. And like I said, asking for forgiveness, it happens more than once. And I don't think it's a faith thing. I feel like that's what keeps me close to God. I hate feeling the way I do. But if I didn't go through those things, then I wouldn't understand how great God really is. And I don't want to say this as something that would reflect negatively on anyone I love. Sometimes I felt rejection from my family. Not necessarily my dad, because for whatever reason in that part in time in his life, he couldn't be a dad. I got to learn later on that he had kids. His kids are the same age as my kids, my older kids. So I feel happy that he figured that out and that he got to be in their lives. I'm happy for them that they had their mom and their dad. I had an amazing grandparent. My grandpa was the best. And so I don't feel like I ever lacked in having a male figure in my life. But I do feel like the love I needed from my family might have been a little more than what they were able to give me. And I feel that maybe that's what kind of carried over into my marriage, thinking that, I have more needs than just I'll raise the kids, I'll clean the kitchen, And I feel like maybe my expectations, because they weren't met in some areas, some sensitive areas of just love and acceptance, that could have been a lot of what carried over. And not knowing that, and me not being able to communicate that effectively, all plays a role in how I guess I felt about other people and how I treated them after I felt wronged. But it's just holding on to that sadness for such a long period of time that it goes into anger, and then you just become bitter, and it's a dark, angry color to me, and it's a color that doesn't look good on me, but it's something that's there, and when God takes it, it'll be great. Some unhealthy ways to get through my bitterness was to, I would say, I don't want to say self-medicate, but I would drink. And I've done other things that are hard to talk about right now because they're still tender and I don't know how to approach that. But to get through my bitterness, I became very self-destructive. And And it was just with me. I didn't have respect for myself because I just thought, this person wronged me. But then in saying that, like, I didn't love myself enough to try to get past that and to, I guess, find ways to help myself until I started to see, hey, God, I need your help in this. Like, I can't take this anymore. I can't hold on to the stress. I can't carry this burden with me because I could have a great day. I could come home from work and I could have my kids there. Whether we had things or not, I could enjoy them. But when the thought would come to my head about somebody else, my whole physiology changed. And it's just this disgusting, awful feeling that would come up in me, and then I'm done for the day. Like, I don't know how to get out of that. So having to be intentional with my prayers, having to be intentionally refocusing my thoughts and reminding myself, this person's going to do what this person does. I can't control that. What I can control is how I react to it. And just say, God, take this. I'm going to give this to you. And then, God, whatever's going on in that person's life, please help them. I mean, it'll help me out if you help them, but I can't imagine what struggle and pain my ex-husband went through if he had an addiction to pornography. I don't know where that comes from. I don't understand that, but God does. And I would hope that, my prayers were for that God just to step in and help heal that area in this person's life. Like, what is that saying, hurt people will hurt people. And my bitterness, I hurt people. And I hurt people that I love the most. I was hurt by someone that I loved, and I'm carrying that on. I mean, I know my kids had to have seen it. It's not like, maybe some people are able to handle these same issues more eloquently. I'm not. It hurts. And it's real, and I'm not going to hide that. I just had to learn how to deal with it. And I had to learn how to give that to God continuously. And even now I have to ask God to help me to forgive myself with my own husband, because things are good now, but they weren't for a while. And I don't know how that man stuck around, because I did not make it easy for him. And I was giving him I was painting him a picture of what I was hurt by. I thought, no, you're going to hurt me too. I love you and things are going to be great, but also you're probably going to hurt me. And so I would try to counteract a lot of that. I would, I wouldn't say I would set him up, but when things are going to happen, I would automatically think of the negative's going to happen. The negative's going to come out of this. And I'd hold him accountable for something he never even did. And that's just where that bitterness comes in. It's just an awful, evil thing. And it hurts inside. It hurts the person the most. But it's not the only person that it's affecting. It's the people around them. And for me, it was my family. It was my husband. I would say 9 times out of 10 when I'm feeling hurt and I know I have to forgive something, I have to really come to terms with what happened. And did I play a role in this? Did I do anything that could have contributed to, the situation at hand? I'm pretty good about that. I don't always like that. Yeah, I do contribute to a lot of it, but I try to see where it is that I could do better. And then I really kind of have to sit down and be like, God, help me. Help this person. I find myself praying for that person a lot after I pray for myself, because I know I'll do things wrong, and I know that I don't make it easy for other people to want to get too close to me or to love me. But when I'm wronged and I'm hurt, it's a supernatural thing, letting God come in and do it. And it's not easy. You would think that as a Christian, hey, you've done it before. It doesn't mean it's easy every time. Like, I have to be intentional with it. And one day maybe I won't. One day I'll be one of those saints that can be like, oh, take it, we're good. But it's a process. And with every opportunity I have to forgive somebody or to forgive myself, I just remember, God, show me what I need to learn in this situation and help me to move on. What can I do differently next time? It really is a spiritual warfare. I don't want to be angry at a person. I want to be angry at what's driving that person to do this. Why did this person want to hurt me? What happened to this person? And at one point in time, I'm prayerful that with the people in my past, my ex-husband, any of my friends that stepped away or walked away, that we would be willing to reconcile, because there's no point in staying bitter at somebody. It just hurts yourself. And I don't want to be that person to hold on to it. That's not who I am. That's not natural for me. I still struggle with trusting. And this is the thing. My husband and he doesn't give me a reason not to trust him. And so I just wonder, why do I hold on to that? I work through it, and I know that this is within me. And I'm like, I have to forgive. And I work on the forgiving. It's not like a one-time thing for me. I can't just say, God, take this, forgive me. It's like an intentional thing. I might have to forgive something twice a day, 4 times a day, every hour. If it comes back to my mind, God, help me to forgive this because it's hurting me. The other person, it doesn't matter to them. They don't see the wrong in that. They may not care, or maybe they do. They just don't know how to get out of it. But for me, I have to protect myself, and I have to continually go to God to ask for help with that. And I didn't realize how much that pain and that hurt would carry over into other parts of my life. And people would never know that. Like I said before, I love people. Like, I get energy when I'm around people. I could talk forever when I'm around people. But when I'm home and I'm by myself and I'm with my own thoughts, it gets dark. And it's just the enemy there reminding me of those pains I had. And it's just an intentional act. I don't want to say daily, but sometimes it's daily, to try to refocus myself and say, okay, God, take this, because this hurts. I feel like my relationship with God has grown, and I feel like every time I go through something, and with my bitterness, it just gives God another opportunity to work in my life, and it gives me another opportunity to reach out to God and ask Him to help me, because I can't do it on my own. I wouldn't be the person I am. I wouldn't want to serve. I wouldn't want to be a part of church. I wouldn't want to, what kind of friend would I be? And what kind of wife would I be if I just held on to my bitterness? Like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want my kids to see that and to grow up around that. If I'm going to be an example for Christ, which I want to be in everything I do, that has to be something that I have to deal with, and I do. And I'm so thankful that God is such a forgiving God, and He's so graceful, and that He's made strong in that weakness of mine.